Hello, my name is Aziz Abdul. I live in Dallas, Texas, and I'm going to be studying biology and political science at Southern Methodist University. In this video, I'll be giving a book review on Ambedkar, an Economist Extraordinaire by Narendra Jadhav. There have been many influential leaders throughout Indian history, ranging from the British rule era to modern India. Among them is Bharat Ratna Dr. Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar, who is admirably called Baba Saheb Ambedkar. I plan to learn more about him by reading Ambedkar Awakening India's Social Conscience by the renowned economist and author Narendra Jadhav. However, I was accidentally delivered another book titled Ambedkar, an Economist Extraordinaire, which was also written by Narendra Jadhav. I was curious about the book, so I decided to keep it and read it. Jadhav published this book in March of 2015, and he dwells on Ambedkar's economic philosophy. In this book, Jadhav covers topics ranging from the personal life of Dr. Ambedkar to his social ideology, his economic philosophy, and his vision for India at large. Jadhav splits this book into 4 parts, taking the reader through some of Ambedkar's most influential and transformative moments. Jadhav's style of writing includes in-depth analysis, quotes, and excerpts from some of Ambedkar's well-known speeches and legislative documents, which give the reader a sense of the complexities that Ambedkar faced. For example, the gray text here is taken from the actual documents of Dr. Ambedkar, while the white part is from Narendra Jadhav's commentary. In Part 1, Life and Times of Ambedkar, the author recounts Ambedkar's background and how it contributed to the socio-political and economic transformation that Ambedkar led. The author highlights how Ambedkar, being from a lower caste, without any financial or political heritage, overcame all those hurdles to become the fundamental architect of the Constitution of India. Narendra Jadhav acknowledges that some only regard Ambedkar as a leader of the untouchables or the Dalits, which can undermine his work that has led to the emancipations of millions across the entire country. His leadership has moved the masses and brought the notion of creating a democratic republic based on social equity and cultural incorporation. Jadhav also chronologically divides Ambedkar's public life into 8 distinct phases, in which brief summaries are included about topics ranging from Ambedkar's first meeting with Gandhi to contesting in the Lok Sabha election. The reader can use the events detailed in Part 1 as background information into Ambedkar's philosophies, which are more comprehensively analyzed in the upcoming parts. And moving on to Part 2, the author includes Ambedkar's scholarly contributions to the field of economics, which give the reader a different perspective as to how Ambedkar envisioned progress in Indian society. Ambedkar breaks down the financial situation during the British India era, providing the reader insight into Ambedkar's contributions to public finances and how it is still relevant in contemporary times. Jadhav outlines Chapter 5 in Part 2 to present Ambedkar's acknowledgement of certain issues of the rupee and ways to fix it. Part 2 includes part of Ambedkar's personal journey, which I found really interesting, and aspects of his education and observations in London and in India, which allowed the reader and allowed me to truly see Ambedkar's experiences and how they shaped him. Moving on to Part 3, which is titled Analysis of Indian Economic Problems, Jadhav captures Ambedkar's identification, thoughts, and solutions for India's economic issues. Ambedkar's vision for economic progress in India depended on 3 things: eradication of poverty, elimination of inequalities, and on ending the exploitation of the masses. Jadhav focuses on Ambedkar's emphasis that water and power resources would be the basis of a post-war reconstruction plan, as these resources would allow for significant development in regional and rural areas. Reading Part 3, I truly understood how industrialization and infrastructure are key in Indian economic progress. It was also interesting to see how Ambedkar, once a well-known proponent of the Marxist philosophy, transformed his views, and how Jadhav includes the critique of Marxism by Ambedkar. Ambedkar rejected the Marxist notion that all human activities are economically driven. Rather, he promoted the idea that fraternity should drive the human being. This idea of fraternity, along with liberty and equality, was an inspiration Ambedkar gained from the French Revolution. Also, the Russian Revolution resulted primarily in an absolute form of equality, on which Ambedkar commented that it is necessary to strike a balance between equality and the ideas of fraternity and liberty. Jadhav includes two extensive reviews on two systems that Ambedkar fought against. Number one is the Maharvatan system, and number two is the Khoti system. Ambedkar's fight against the Maharvatan system, in which the rural poor belonging to the Mahar caste, who had low-ranking jobs in the government, essentially became slaves to the government to do all sorts of tasks. Most of the times, these tasks were strenuous and constant. For example, discarding a dead carcass or accompanying government officials' tanga on foot. In exchange, the Mahar would receive a vatan, which is a piece of land which was sometimes accompanied with some low wages. Ambedkar began the fight against this exploitful system in the September of 1927, when he published a series of articles in his paper called the Bahishkrut Bharat. Moving on, the Khoti system was a land tenure system present in Maharashtra. Farmers would work under these Khots, who would collect revenue and pass it on to the government. The Khots would exploit the farmers as bonded laborers, and Jadhav describes this system that is something that is basically slavery. However, Jadhav recognizes that this land tenure system provides a way for revenue from land cultivation to be collected, though the disadvantages are far greater. The author includes excerpts from a bill introduced by Ambedkar during his time as an elected member in the Mumbai Legislative Assembly, whose strong advocacy against the Khoti system shows, as he describes that the Khoti system is sucking the blood of the rural poor farmers. The bill included the following: abolish the Khoti system, Khots are entitled to reasonable compensation for their loss, give inferior holdings the status of occupants according to the Land Revenue Code, and finally to provide for other incidental purposes. On the issue of untouchability, from an economic perspective, Ambedkar considered it worse than slavery, as the worker is not regarded, whereas a slave owner would actually keep its slave in good condition for its value in the market. Towards the end of part 3, Jadhav shifts to more social topics, with the inclusion of Ambedkar's multiple ideas to awaken the social conscience of the untouchables, which included mass migration to another country or even mass conversion to a different religion altogether. A key highlight of this book is the section of the Gandhi-Ambedkar debate, where Gandhi finds fault with Ambedkar's book, An Annihilation of Caste. He finds fault in the authenticity and the mistaken meaning of Varna, which means to follow one's ancestral calling. Ambedkar refutes the claim of the doubtful authenticity by, though confessing that he has no real authority over that, he uses the fact that the cited texts in his book were from Mr. Tilak, who is a recognized authority. As for the issue on ancestral calling, Ambedkar argues that a man doesn't necessarily have to follow his ancestral calling if it does not befit him or is not profitable anymore. For example, if a man whose grandfather was a farmer, he himself does not need to be a farmer. Ambedkar also respectfully points out that Gandhi hasn't fulfilled his own ancestral calling, which was trading. And so part 3 really allowed me to explore Ambedkar's economic propositions through the many examples that are included by Jadhav, and understand how democracy is not democracy without economic democracy. In moving on to part 4, Jadhav recaps the socio-economic philosophy of Ambedkar. Ambedkar shapes his economic philosophy given the social, religious, and moral context of society, while still promoting the ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Personally, I would recommend reading Ambedkar, Awakening India's Social Conscience, which would give a good background of who Ambedkar is and the experiences that shaped him, before reading this book, Ambedkar, an Economist Extraordinaire, which primarily focuses on his economic thoughts. Although previous exposure to economics, such as taking a macro or microeconomics course, would be beneficial in terms of understanding some of the economic terminology in this book, Jadhav effectively conveys Ambedkar's ideas for everyone to learn and benefit. There's a lot that Indian society can gain from Ambedkar's contributions, and so this book has shaped the way that I will see the world now, looking for ways society can move forward just as Ambedkar did. Thank you.